Hello everybody, here we have a 1975 Bultaco Pursang mk8. This is a 360, model 136. These bikes are really cool. They're different than the 250s in a couple ways. The first is the obvious, the paint scheme. It's red with a yellow stripe instead of blue with a white stripe. This is a little different than 1974 models because this bike's going to have the white fenders on it. The mk7s actually had light gray fenders, even though a lot of them are over restored nowadays and have white fenders. You can tell that this bike's got a little bit more rear travel. It's got the swing arm that's slightly different than 1974, where it's got those shock mounts moved up. Now the motor on the 360s is uniquely different than model 121. So the model 121s are a true 360. This bike would actually basically be Pursang 370, but they wouldn't change the name for another calendar year. But, this is probably Bultaco's best Pursang they ever made. Now, when they upgraded next year into the mk9s and mk10 models, it's not that they made a bad decision. They made a good decision making the bike more motocross-like and everything, having the longer travel, but the machine just didn't slide the way it did in 75 and 74, and even the earlier years too. These bikes always had a kind of flat tracky feel to them. They never wanted to take the inside line unless you were going to just apex it and push it all the way wide again. These bikes always like to take the outside and do it really fast. They're always begging you to go a gear higher on the outside. Amel carburetor on this one. Now, I think this actually is a 1974 carb. I think the 75 stock used the newer style one. But I've been using this bike in Arma now for the past 10 years or so. Really good machine. In 74, these would be labeled Bultaco's illegal super light with the model 121. That's because it came in at about 204 pounds, and that was below the FIM's ruling for the works bikes. They wanted to start making them a little heavier because everybody was going crazy with titanium frames and everything like that. People were starting to get injured. It was getting tougher for privateers. But this bike still came in under that, really, because this is very similar to that model 121. It's got Coney rear shocks on the back. Dual plug FEMSA ignition. You'll notice this machine, they use two petcocks, one on each side, feeding into the Amel carb. These hubs are always very pretty on these machines. The front and the rears have actually been used on a lot of things like custom choppers and so forth over the years. Not only are they super light, but they just look fantastic. Part of the thing that makes this bike super light is actually the fact that these hubs, they didn't have a steel liner in them. They actually had a coating in it. Kept the hub weight very light. A lot of people report having braking issues with their Pursang, and it's usually just because that lining's worn off over the years. It's getting harder and harder to find ones that still have that stock. Nowadays you can push a steel liner into it, but it's a lot of machining. It's nicer just to have a nice original set like these. The bike just makes such incredible power too, just the way that it's smooth all the way from bottom to top. This bike doesn't have a lot of vibrations to it, and it has that unique flat tracky feel. This was actually my first Bultaco motocrosser that I had ever had, and from there I went on to have basically all the different generations of Pursang. Now I'm down to about 5 of them, I think. But I would say this is the sweetest one of all. I have another mk8, the 250, and I'd be lying to say that I think this is faster than the 250. I'm not sure that this bike even makes a true 40 horsepower. It's just the way this machine does everything is very special. If you own one of these, you would know what I mean. It's silky smooth and so lightweight, and it just does things that no other machine ever did in motocross. Like I said, when Bultaco moved on to the mk9s and mk10s, they just lost something about these. And it wasn't that they went backwards or regressed with the machine. It was just time had moved on and kind of, it lost what was special about these bikes. They were able to do things different than the modern motocrossers, but we could never go back to these. The frame loops are very fragile on the rear. In fact, my father had picked this up before one of the Armor races and had actually damaged that, and I still haven't brazed it back or welded it back on. I just threw some JB weld on it before a race, and before you knew it, that lasted on there for a year now or something. Goes to show you how you get dragged away from these. These did have primary chains under that cover. The Bader forks in the front were probably the finest forks in the world. I'll gladly put them on just about anything. You'll notice that this is an original style front number plate, unique like that. All these bolts are stamped Bultaco on it if you look at them closely. Even the ones for the shocks. I don't have a rubber on the Kickstarter right now. Those fall off all the time to that. I almost don't even bother with them. I started wire tying them for a while, but even that doesn't last too long. This is an original paint tank that at some point I'm going to have to redo. You can see here it was signed by my big orange house cat, Eddie. Should say garage cat. Fiberglass number plates. Those are the original ones. These conies, they were okay on the rear, but you know, I just kind of overheated the bodies every time I'd ride them in an Armor race. Really going to something more modern. Worth Performance or Olin's would be nice. Right now, anytime I do hard riding with this bike, I borrow the shocks off my 250. And we'll do a comprehensive breakdown of all the Pursangs and how they compare generation-wise in a future video, and also compare this to the 250 that, like I said, is probably a little faster than this one, but that's an mk8 GP, so it had some extra spicy stuff done to that too, but we'll talk about that in a different video. Well, if you guys like this one, please subscribe so that you can see those future videos. And in fact, we're going to actually do a bunch of cool stuff riding this bike in the very near future once we get set up a little better here. Thank you, everybody.